At my sister's Harvard graduation party, my mother stood before hundreds of people, pointed directly at me, and roared, "She's a disgrace. I wish I never had her." At that moment, hundreds of eyes turned toward me. Some people laughed mockingly, while others looked at me with sympathy. But instead of staying silent and enduring it like I always did, I walked straight up to the main area and confronted her in front of everyone. They didn't expect that. Just a few minutes later, my sister's boyfriend shouted, "Wait, you're Diana Martinez, the owner of Apex Automotive." After he said that, the entire party erupted into chaos. My parents were stunned when they realized that the daughter they considered a failure was the family's most successful person. Let's follow the story together and tell me, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Hello, everyone. I'm Diana Martinez, 34 years old, founder of Apex Automotive with 10 stores across 6 states. I live in San Diego with my husband Lucas and our 1-year-old daughter. Her name is Colleen, and she might be just like me with a passion for cars. Because whenever she sees cars, even though she can't talk yet, she always breaks into the biggest smile and gets so excited. Apex Automotive isn't just a place that sells cars. We do everything related to automobiles, from repairs and maintenance to custom modifications based on what customers want to find those special vehicles they're looking for. Some people come to us because their old Honda needs to be restored like new, while others want us to find them a classic Mustang from the 1960s. We serve all kinds of customers, from people who need car repairs for their daily commute to those who have a passion for rare cars, even supercars. 16 years of building from a small garage to what we have today. This work has become an essential part of my life. But despite all the success, if you search for my name on the internet, you won't find any information about me. No interviews, ribbon-cutting ceremony photos, or even a decent LinkedIn profile. I choose to let my work speak for itself. Because of this low-key lifestyle, my family, specifically my father and mother, have always looked down on me. The breaking point was 4 years ago, at a party where they publicly humiliated me in front of nearly 100 guests. From that moment on, the bond between me and them was completely severed. 4 years ago, Camila, my sister, became the most considerable pride of our entire family when she graduated from Harvard Law with Summa Lai honors. I was genuinely happy for her when she called to tell me this news, and my joy doubled when Camila invited me to attend her graduation party a week later, which would be held at a restaurant near my parents' house. After that invitation, I immediately agreed. A few days later, Lucas and I, my boyfriend at the time, planned to find a meaningful gift for Cami. We decided to buy a Rolex Oyster Perpetual 31mm with an emerald green face, a gift I thought would suit a lawyer who always needs to be on time. While we were still planning what to wear to the party, my mother called me 2 days before the event. As soon as I answered, she got straight to the point. She said, "Diana, I don't think you should attend Camila's party this weekend." After that suggestion, I didn't hesitate for a second. I asked my mother directly why she would say that. After a few seconds of silence, she sighed and said, "I don't want to be blunt, but that party isn't suitable for a car mechanic. There will be a lot of relatives there, and our family's relatives are all college-educated people with stable jobs. Nobody has hands that are always dirty like yours." After my mother said that, I was honestly a bit shocked, because for all these years she had been taking money from these hands that were always dirty. And before I could respond, my mother continued saying that Camila's boyfriend would attend the party. He's the CEO of his family's company, and she didn't want my presence to affect Camila's future. I clearly remember what she said before hanging up. Nobody wants others to know their family has a failure. That evening, I told Lucas about this conversation. After listening, he looked straight into my eyes with a determined voice. "We should go, not because of your parents, but for Camila herself. You've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on her Harvard tuition. Now it's time to see if your sister is worth everything you've done." At that moment, after Lucas's advice, we decided we would attend the party, even though we knew we'd have to face some unfriendly looks from my family. 2 days after my mother's phone call, Lucas and I walked into the restaurant around 5:30 in the afternoon. The atmosphere that day was truly formal, with carefully decorated tables, and I could see quite a few people had already arrived. Camila beamed and ran over as soon as she saw me, bringing along a tall young man. After a tight hug and some greetings, my sister introduced Nolan, her boyfriend. Nolan immediately shook my hand, but his eyes seemed to be trying to remember something. Then, after a moment of silence, Nolan spoke up and asked me, "Diana Martinez, that name sounds very familiar. I'm sure I've met you somewhere before." I was slightly surprised, but stayed calm and replied, "Maybe you've got me confused with someone else." Right then, Lucas stepped in by taking out the gift box we had prepared. He opened the box and carefully put the Rolex Oyster Perpetual on Camilla's wrist. The light reflecting off the emerald green watch face made my sister practically scream, "Oh my God, Diana, I can't believe it. This is so beautiful." Seeing my sister so happy then, I felt all the effort we put into preparing was worth it. Lucas also smiled and squeezed my hand tighter, but that joyful atmosphere didn't last long. Just 2 minutes later, Camilla excused herself to greet other guests who had just arrived. And as soon as my sister left, I saw my parents walking toward us. My mother, Amelia, came over with a tense expression and said, "I told you not to come. Why didn't you listen?" After that statement, before I could react, my father, Daniel, spoke up with an equally unpleasant tone. "Since you're here, find some corner to sit in and don't make us embarrassed because of you." As I was about to open my mouth to respond, Lucas squeezed my hand tight. Then he looked straight into my parents' eyes with a very annoyed expression and pulled me away without saying a word. About 30 minutes later, the party began. Lucas and I found a table in the corner of the room, away from the curious glances from relatives and acquaintances. From this seat, I could observe the entire party space. That day, nearly 100 guests were present, from Camilla's college friends and professors from Harvard to relatives from both sides of our family. Everyone was dressed formally, creating an exquisite scene. Camilla looked radiant that day in an elegant black dress with the emerald green Rolex on her wrist, standing out under the lights. My sister moved from table to table, greeting and thanking each guest. Nolan was always by Camilla's side and always extended his hand to shake hands with everyone whenever my sister introduced him. From where I sat, I could see my parents sitting at the main table where the most important guests were. They were chatting animatedly, with cheerful laughter occasionally ringing out. My mother seemed very excited when talking to people. If I remember correctly, she bragged about Camilla's achievements. Several times, I caught my mother's eyes looking toward our table. She couldn't hide her annoyance at seeing me still there. My father, on the other hand, completely ignored us, as if I didn't exist. At that moment, Lucas gently took my hand under the table and whispered, "Are you okay?" After that caring question, I nodded and smiled back. "I'm fine. We're here for Camilla." At that time, I had no idea I would become the party center in just a few minutes. About 20 minutes later, Camilla approached the main area to give her speech. At that moment, my sister looked confident holding the microphone, her voice echoing throughout the party room. Camilla started by thanking everyone for attending, then shared about her journey studying at Harvard. Finally, she didn't forget to thank our parents and me. A warm feeling spread through my heart when my name was mentioned. At least my sister still remembered her sister on this crucial day. But then, right after Camilla finished her speech, just as I expected, Amelia, my mother, stepped up to the main area. At that moment, I chuckled softly because I knew my mother never missed giving a speech on essential occasions like this. She began by recounting Camilla's achievements since childhood. From academic awards to getting accepted into Harvard, her voice was full of pride as she said, "Camilla is my pride and joy. Today, I'm so proud because Camilla has accomplished something that no one in our family has done in many years." At the end of her speech, I remember clearly the moment she turned toward Cami, her voice full of emotion, saying, "Camilla, I'm proud of you." Immediately, hundreds of guests applauded enthusiastically while Camilla secretly wiped away tears. She must have been very moved. And when I thought the speech would end there, suddenly she shifted to talking about me. Even though it's been 4 years, every word she said then is still clear in my memory. I don't know if it was because a few glasses of wine made her lose control, or because she was still angry that I didn't listen and dared to show up at this party. After the proud speech about Cami, my mother suddenly said, "Alongside my pride in Camilla, I feel ashamed of Diana, her sister." At that moment, the entire room of nearly 100 people fell silent and listened. Right after that, she pointed toward where Lucas and I were sitting and roared, I don't understand why. Born from the same mother, one child is beautiful and talented, while the other goes to work fixing cars with hands always covered in grease. Right after that statement, I saw Lucas stand up, ready to speak, but I quickly pulled him back down. And then to end her speech, my mother said with a cold sentence I'll never forget, "She's a disgrace. I wish I never had her." The entire party room fell into terrifying silence after her statement. A few seconds later, I felt contemptuous looks from relatives who were used to seeing me as a failure. As for the guests meeting me for the first time today, they looked at me with pitying eyes, as if witnessing something truly pathetic. Right then, Lucas stood up once again. I knew he wouldn't easily stay quiet in situations like this. Lucas wasn't the rude type, but at the very least, he would say things like, "You can't talk about her like that," or maybe something worse, like, "You don't deserve to be a mother." But I didn't let Lucas do that. I gently held him back and whispered, "Stay here and wait for me." Right after that, I stood up in front of hundreds of witnesses. I walked straight to the main area. At that moment, I stood facing my mother and calmly said loud enough without needing a microphone, "If you're wondering why, born from the same mother, Camila is talented while I'm not as good as her, there are only two possibilities. The first possibility is that I was switched at the hospital after you gave birth to me. The second possibility is that you had an affair." After that statement, gasps, amazed whispers, and even soft laughter from some younger people rang out below. Some guests shook their heads in disbelief, while others took out their phones to record this scene. My mother then screamed with a red face, "You cannot disrespect me!" After that scream, I wasn't scared at all. I calmly replied, "If you want me to respect you, you must respect me first. From now on, I'm not carrying the Martinez name anymore. From now on, you and I are done." After my words, my mother quickly responded with a somewhat panicked voice, "I just wanted you to be better. Don't make this worse than it needs to be. Look at your sister who graduated from Harvard Law with summa cum laude honors. Not everyone can do that." At that moment, I looked at her, then looked at Camilla. My sister now had tears streaming down, smearing her light makeup. Nolan stood beside her, wanting to say something to me, but he hesitated. Then I saw him take out his phone, point at something on the screen, and whisper something to Camilla. At that moment, I wanted to tell her that Camilla's 4 years of Harvard tuition was money I had lent her. But then I didn't want to be the one to ruin my sister's party. Right after that, I said to my mother, my voice quieter, but loud enough for her to hear, "Go ask Camilla, who paid for her 4 years of tuition." Right after that statement, I walked toward Lucas, planning to take him and leave. When I only took a few steps toward Lucas, Nolan, Camilla's boyfriend, suddenly shouted, "Wait, you're Diana Martinez, the owner of Apex Automotive." At that exact moment, the entire party room suddenly turned all their attention toward us. Right after that, he and Camilla quickly approached me, his hand still holding up his phone screen. While I was still hesitating, not knowing whether I should respond, Nolan continued excitedly, "I'm not mistaken. My father, Grant Carter, is a loyal customer of yours. Last week, he bragged about the photo he took with you when he bought that Mustang from your place. He even said, 'I should learn from you. I'm not wrong. I have the picture.'" And Camilla confirmed it. After those words, I immediately remembered Grant Carter. He regularly brought cars to my place, sometimes for modifications or maintenance, and bought 5 cars from me. Grant Carter was one of our special customers. Immediately, I noticed the atmosphere at the party started getting noisy. Some people who already knew Apex Automotive were saying things to each other like, "I know Apex Automotive. I've taken my car there for maintenance. They're very professional." Or, "If I had the money, I'd go there to buy a supercar too. Their service is excellent." As for some people who didn't know, I saw them taking out their phones to search for information. Whispers and surprised looks started spreading throughout the party room. My parents stood frozen, their faces pale when they realized the truth, and it was nearly a minute later before I replied to Nolan calmly, "I'm thrilled to meet Grant Carter's son here. I hope you won't tell your family about the terrible things that happened at today's party. I hope you won't mistreat Cammie because of this incident." After my request, Nolan scratched his head and quickly replied, "Don't worry, I'm an understanding person. I love Camilla for who she is." I shook his hand sincerely at that moment, then walked toward Lucas. I took his hand and we walked out of the party room together. Before we left through the door, a burst of applause suddenly rang out from behind us. Maybe they wanted to congratulate my success, or perhaps they were congratulating me for getting away from my toxic family. Lucas squeezed my hand tight as we stepped outside, whispering, "You did the right thing." That evening, while Lucas fell into a deep sleep, I was still awake. What happened at the party kept replaying, making sleep impossible. I remember 16 years ago when our family was having a difficult time. Dad lost his job at the construction site, and Mom had to work double shifts at the restaurant to support the family. I was 18 then, just graduated from high school. While my classmates were all preparing for college, I decided on something completely different. My passion for cars had been deeply rooted in my blood since I was young, and I knew this was the path meant for me. So, I decided not to go to college, but to go to Rodriguez Auto Shop to learn car repair. When I announced this decision to my family, my parents' reaction broke my heart. Dad said disappointedly, "You're throwing away your future." And Mom cried her heart out. "How can you make a living with this job?" That was precisely when they started changing their attitude toward me. From then on, whenever I came home during holidays, I always received coldness from them, as if I had become a stranger in my own family. After 3 years of diligent learning at Rodriguez Auto Shop, I became the most skilled head mechanic at the shop. I could handle most types of cars, but more importantly, I realized the luxury and classic car market had huge potential. Because of that, I decided to open my shop at 21 years old. At that time, the family had somewhat recovered financially. Dad had found stable work, and Mom didn't have to work double shifts. At that time, I came home hoping to ask my parents to lend me $15,000 to start my business. When I explained my business plan, my parents listened coldly. Finally, Mom said firmly, "The entire family's future now depends only on Camilla. We can't lend you the money." After that statement, I still cheerfully accepted it. Instead of begging or arguing, I applied for a bank loan. With 3 years of work experience and a concrete business plan, the bank approved me for $15,000. Combined with my savings, I officially opened Martinez Auto Restoration, specializing in restoring classic cars. My first customer was a collector who paid me $25,000 to restore a 1967 Mustang. I knew I had chosen the right path when I held that check. From restoring classic cars, I gradually expanded to selling high-quality second-hand cars, then became an official dealer for some luxury car brands. At 26 years old, I decided to expand and officially name the company Apex Automotive, with the first showroom in a nicer area in the suburbs. Even with the expansion, I kept my original principle of serving all customers, from people who needed repairs on old cars to those who wanted to buy luxury vehicles. Every customer deserves to be treated the best, regardless of what car they bring in. Our customers are very diverse. There are local business people, sometimes a few celebrities, but most are still ordinary people who need quality service at reasonable prices. I remember once a small tech company CEO brought his Tesla in for repair, and he said he had tried many places, but only here did they do it right. From $100,000 in revenue during the early startup years, now, after taxes and all expenses, my annual net income is about $3 million. Not a terrible number, but enough for me to live comfortably and, more importantly, to help the family when needed. Even so, my parents have never asked about my work or shown any interest in what I've built. Regarding my family, when they refused to lend me $15,000, I didn't hold a grudge against them or compare myself to Camilla. On the contrary, when my work stabilized, I wanted to financially support my parents and sister. The first time I did this was when I was 23, right after I had paid off my bank loan and could breathe easier financially. That day when I came home for dinner, Camilla said, "I wish I could get a slightly newer laptop. Even a used one would be fine to help with my studies." When I asked more, she told me she had asked Mom, but she refused because the old computer still worked, even though it was slow. The next day I bought Cammie a brand new laptop. When she received the gift, Camilla was so happy that she ran all around the house looking for our parents to show off. Her cheerful laughter echoed throughout the home. That was the first time in years I felt useful to the family. However, my parents' reaction at that time disappointed me a bit. They didn't praise me. They just asked how much the computer cost and nodded coldly as if buying a laptop for my sister was just something I was supposed to do, nothing worth praising. A few months later began a string of help requests I had never expected. Sometimes $200 because this month's electricity bill was a bit high. Sometimes $300 because Camila needed to buy more reference books. Sometimes $500 because the house needed repairs. Every time like that, I would transfer the money immediately without hesitation. I always thought that we are family and helping each other is natural. I also never asked for that money back, considering it as a gift I gave to the family. When I turned 25 and my work was more stable, I decided to provide the family with fixed support of $500 monthly. When I announced this during a dinner at home, my parents' reaction warmed my heart. Mom teared up and gripped my hand tightly. "Thank you so much." Dad nodded with satisfaction. "You've done the right thing." The family must take care of each other. I felt thrilled at that moment and thought they had finally recognized me. 3 years later, when I was 28 and my business was developing stronger, I increased the support to $1,000 monthly. I wanted my parents to have a more comfortable life. For the next 2 years, I continued sending money regularly until the day of Camila's graduation party. Calculated over 5 years, I had spent nearly $40,000 on them, but they weren't grateful at all. On the contrary, at my sister's most important party, they wished they had never had me. At that moment, I realized how wrong I had been to think that money could buy respect and love from family. That night, while Lucas slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The words my mother had screamed in front of everyone replayed endlessly in my mind. The shame, the humiliation, the betrayal. But beneath it all was the bitter realization that I had been wrong all along. Money could never buy respect. Money could never buy love. With that thought, I picked up my phone from the nightstand, opened my banking app, and immediately canceled the $1,000 monthly transfer I had been sending to my parents. My hand didn't tremble. My heart didn't race. I believed I had finally done the right thing. The next morning, Lucas and I were enjoying a quiet breakfast together when the doorbell rang. The chime echoed through the house, startling us both. I stood up and went to the door. To my surprise, Camila and Nolan were standing outside. I didn't think my sister would show up so soon. I quickly invited them in and brewed coffee for the two of them. Lucas greeted them politely and then stepped aside to give us siblings some private space. When I set 2 steaming mugs down on the table, Camila's eyes were already brimming with tears. As soon as she spoke, her voice cracked. "I'm sorry, Diana. I should have defended you at the party. I was too shocked. I didn't know what to do." Nolan sat quietly beside her, sipping his coffee, watching silently as if he knew this was between us. Camila continued, "After you left, Mom and Dad, they just disappeared. They didn't even say goodbye. They left all the guests behind, whispering about what had happened." Hearing that, I couldn't help but let out a dry chuckle. But then Camila leaned forward, her words trembling with sincerity. "I'm shocked, but I'm also proud to have you as my sister. I never imagined you were so successful, and I hope, even if you hate our parents, you won't hate me." Her eyes searched mine desperately for reassurance. I laughed softly, not out of mockery, but because Camila was still so innocent, still holding on to hope that love could rise above all this. After about half an hour of heartfelt conversation, she finally wiped her tears and announced with a shy but determined smile, "I've just found a job. The starting salary is $100,000 per year, and I promise I'll repay you the $200,000 you lent me for school." When those words left her mouth, my heart filled with warmth. At least one person in the family remembered my sacrifices. At least one person hadn't taken me for granted. The $200,000 Camila spoke of was money I had never expected to see again. 4 years earlier, when she first got into Harvard, our parents had told her they could only help with $15,000 a year for living expenses. They told her to take out loans for the rest. I still remember one night when she sat quietly at the dinner table, looking defeated. When I asked her what was wrong, she admitted she was considering giving up Harvard for a cheaper school. That night, I made her a promise. I would cover her tuition, $200,000 for 4 years, without interest. She would only need to repay me once she graduated. I also told her not to tell Mom and Dad. If they knew, they would surely find ways to take advantage of me again. Camila had asked me how I even had that kind of money. I told her it was savings from years of working nonstop since I was 18. Her response was simple: I won't let you down. So when she sat in my living room years later, vowing to repay me, I knew she had kept her promise. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I still had a sister I could trust. After Camilla and Nolan left, the following days were strangely peaceful. No more phone calls from my parents, no text messages asking to borrow money, no complaints about bills or life. For a fleeting moment, I thought maybe they felt guilty, maybe they were ashamed. But I was wrong. Exactly 1 week later, after a long day at work, I had just come home and was preparing to shower when the doorbell rang again, this time with a relentless urgency. When I opened the gate, my parents were standing there, their faces stiff, their eyes demanding. I knew immediately this wasn't a visit of reconciliation. They had tried calling me all morning, but I ignored every attempt. Now, here they were in person. As soon as they saw me, Mom's expression softened unnaturally. I kept calling you, but couldn't get through. What were you busy with? She asked sweetly, as if the venomous words she hurled at me days earlier had never left her lips. I didn't invite them in. My voice was cold. I remember telling you that we're done. Immediately, Dad snapped, his tone sharp and annoyed. Are you still holding a grudge about that night? How petty. I just stared at him, then let a small sarcastic smile tug at my lips. What are you here for? I asked directly. After a few seconds of awkward silence, Mom's voice turned honeyed. Your father and I want to change cars. Can you give us one? A Honda Accord or Toyota Camry would be fine. I almost laughed. They had humiliated me in front of hundreds of people, wished they'd never had me, and now they came back asking for a car? Their shamelessness exceeded my imagination. I didn't hesitate. There won't be any car, and I've already cut the $1,000 monthly transfer I was sending you. Mom gasped, horrified. That's impossible. You can't do that to the people who gave birth to you. I met her eyes without flinching. I remember exactly what you said that night. You wished you'd never had me, and I told you then, I already fulfilled your wish. With that, I slammed the gate shut, leaving them outside. Their voices rose into curses. Mom shouted, You can hate us, but don't be ungrateful. Dad banged his fist on the gate, yelling, Open the door! 2 minutes later, they finally left when a neighbor stepped out and threatened to call the police for disturbing the peace. The silence afterward was heavy, but it was a silence I welcomed. That evening, after dinner, I was reading an article about new car models on my iPad when Lucas came into the living room, his face worried, phone in hand. Look at this, he said urgently. On the screen was a Reddit post. The username, Amelia Martinez, my mother's account. The title hit me like a brick. My daughter is Diana Martinez, owner of Apex Automotive, but she lives ungratefully toward her elderly parents. The post read like a knife, twisting in my chest. My daughter makes millions of dollars every year selling luxury cars, but when her elderly parents need help, she coldly refuses. I only asked her to give us an old car to get around, but she refused, and even kicked us out of her house. I don't understand how I could have raised such an ungrateful child. Do you think I did anything wrong? Below her words were hundreds of comments. Most were harsh, venomous, calling me names. Ungrateful, heartless, a spoiled millionaire who forgot her roots. Some people even said I was a disgrace to womanhood, that no daughter should treat her parents like that. A few neutral voices asked for more context, but they were drowned out by the flood of curses. I sat there staring at the screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. My mother had dragged my name, my company, my life into the open for strangers to rip apart. She had used the internet as her weapon, turning public opinion against me, risking everything I had built for the sake of sympathy. Lucas clenched his jaw, his hand resting on my shoulder. She's gone too far, Diana. Too far. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think clearly. I'd been through worse. Apex Automotive wasn't new to online slander. Competitors had tried dirty tricks before. Fake reviews, false rumors, even smear campaigns. This wasn't new territory. I immediately dialed Bennett, my company's private lawyer. He picked up after the first ring, his tone calm but firm, as though he'd been expecting my call. After 2 minutes of explaining, I sent him the link. Handle it like the other cases, I instructed. I will, Bennett replied without hesitation. Half an hour later, as I sat on the couch, still scrolling through comments, my phone rang again. Camilla. Her voice was panicked. Diana, are you okay? I saw Mom's post. She's slandering you everywhere. Have you seen it? Yes, I replied calmly. My lawyer is already dealing with it. If I have to, I'll sue her too. Don't, Camilla begged, her voice trembling. Please don't sue Mom. Give me a chance. I'll help you fix this. Before I could answer, she hung up. About an hour later, my phone buzzed with a new message from Camilla. A link. I clicked it. Right beneath my mother's post, a video had surfaced, nearly 10 minutes long. The title, What Really Happened at the Harvard Graduation Party. It was the restaurant's professional recording. Clear sound. Clear visuals. There was my mother, standing at the center of the hall, her voice dripping with venom as she declared, "She's a disgrace. I wish I never had her." The entire humiliating scene unfolded on the screen. The silence, the contemptuous stares, the moment Nolan revealed my identity, the whispers spreading like fire, and finally, me standing tall, confronting my mother before walking out to a round of applause. I watched in silence, every word cutting me open again. But this time, the blade wasn't mine to bear. It was hers. The truth was undeniable. And the comments proved it. This mother is cruel beyond words. Her daughter is successful, and she still humiliates her. What kind of parent says that? Shame on her. She doesn't deserve a daughter like Diana. Scrolling further, I saw familiar names. Customers of Apex Automotive, business partners, loyal clients. They all defended me, writing about their experiences, praising the honesty, the service, the quality of my company. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages of support. Private texts from clients, partners, even acquaintances who had seen the video. At that moment, I knew I didn't have to sue. The truth had spoken louder than any lawsuit could. But the damage between me and my parents was irreparable. From that day on, I cut ties completely. Camilla, however, stayed by my side. She repaid every dollar of the $200,000 loan 3 years later. She told me she had no regrets posting the video that exposed the truth, even though our parents disowned her for it. They called me a traitor, she admitted one night, her eyes glistening. But I don't care. Some truths have to be told. And life moved forward. 2 years later, while Nolan proposed to Camilla, Lucas got down on one knee and proposed to me. We decided to share our happiness with a joint wedding. On that day, Camilla sent invitations to our parents. She still held on to a sliver of hope, but they didn't come. Perhaps they were still furious. Perhaps they were ashamed. Camilla shed a few tears in the dressing room, but when she walked down the aisle with Nolan waiting for her, I could see her joy shine brighter than the absence of our parents. Now, years after that fateful party, our lives have completely transformed. Camilla is a respected lawyer. Nolan has taken over his family's business. As for me, Apex Automotive continues to grow stronger, and at home, I have a loving husband and a bright-eyed little girl who lights up my world. What I've learned is simple. Sometimes cutting ties with toxic people, even if they're family, is the only way to find peace. I don't regret walking away. I don't regret standing up for myself. Because in the end, I found what truly matters. A family that loves me, not for what I can give them, but for who I am. And before I end this story, I want to ask you, if your own mother looked you in the eye in front of hundreds of people and said she wished you had never been born, what would you do? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss what's coming next. Thank you for listening to the very end. Goodbye, and see you soon.